I'm Devin Williams, and this is In Spite Of. When is a home not a home? When it becomes something new. Like here at the Philbrook Museum of Art. Once a sprawling villa of Waite and Genevieve Phillips, the Philbrook welcomes its visitors to its world-class collection of art and exhibits. Many private residences have become public spaces for all Tulsans to enjoy, from the Harwelden Mansion to the Tulsa Historical Society to the Garden Center. Many homes in Tulsa now have second lives.
The Harweldon Mansion was built in 1923 by Earl and Mary Harwell. And Earl Harwell was one of the oil barons in Tulsa, Oklahoma that came to Tulsa when we were still a frontier city and was part of the big oil boom. So his company later became Mobil, which is ExxonMobil today. Unfortunately, Mr. Harwell passed away in 1950, and Mary Harwell lived here alone until 1967, at which time she donated the mansion to a brand new nonprofit in our community called the Arts Council of Tulsa. When we first acquired the mansion and I was working with our architects, we did not have original floor plans. So we were trying to figure out a way how to recreate where those bedrooms were. And luckily, we got to know Earl and Mary Harwell's granddaughter, Caroline Crane, and she was wonderful. So she came over to the mansion and we walked around, and not only did she share stories about what it was like growing up in the mansion here with her grandparents, but where everything was located. And so she did a really great job of telling us where those original bedrooms were. The mansion was built in 1923, and so what did the mansion look like? Again, there were a lot of things that we could go by with the woodwork, with the marble, because they were still intact, but the things that had changed, it was really difficult to try to figure out what it looked like before. We did a lot of interviews, we did a lot of research. And also the Harweldon Mansion is located in a historic neighborhood called Maple Ridge. And luckily there are so many beautiful homes and mansions still today. Many of the light fixtures had been replaced over the years, but we were able to restore about 50% of them. We found a local company that specializes in historic preservation of light fixtures. So we polished them up, we rewired them, and did all different types of things to make sure that they were exactly how they appeared in the 1920s. When Mr. Harwell started working on the plans, it was an architecture firm called White & White out of Kansas City. But he spared no expense when he hired craftsmen from not only all over the United States, but all over the world to descend upon Tulsa and to work on the mansion. Well, there's so many interesting nooks and crannies in the house. I think one of my favorite things about the mansion are the safes. So the one most obvious safe is in the dining room, and it's hidden in the fireplace, and it has a wood paneling that's made on the outside, but when you open it, you see a series of drawers that are lined with felt. And since it is the dining room, we're assuming that was for the family silver. But also during construction, we found a second safe, and then we found a third safe under drywall. And I thought that was really, really neat that you had these hidden safes, in this beautiful mansion. But really, probably my most favorite area of the mansion is the tunnel. So there is a tunnel that goes from the basement to the carriage house. And based upon my research, tunnels were fairly popular with people that had money. Back in the 1920s, it was kind of a trendy thing to do to put tunnels, and any of us that are from Tulsa know that there are a lot of tunnels in Tulsa, including in our downtown area. We do have a portrait of Mary Harwell that was painted by Claude Montgomery, and it is on loan by the Harwell family. We're really grateful for that because it's so nice to have her hung in the grand salon in the mansion, because it's the lady of the house that will forevermore be overlooking the mansion. Mary and Earl Harwell had one daughter. Her name was Margot. And she got married in the mansion in 1942. And so we have her wedding dress, and we have it in the bridal suite in the basement. It's stunning, it's gorgeous. But in addition to the dress, we have it displayed. We have an article from the Tulsa Daily World, and they featured her wedding in 1942. So it is really nice that we can showcase, that special occasion that happened in the 1940s in the mansion. I think my favorite part of historic preservation is one, being able to imagine that it looked the way that it did when it was first constructed. So it really is just an extension of the vision of the original owners. But also what I love about it is to invite the community and visitors and others, especially people that travel to Tulsa. I love it when out-of-town guests come into the mansion and they're like, holy cow, I cannot believe this is located right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so I have a lot of pride in our state, in our city, and what we stand for. And I think that's my very favorite thing about historic preservation, because it does tell a story. And in this case, it's a 100-year-old story about our history, our legacy.
I'm Susan Green, and I have the amazing pleasure of getting to work at the Philbrook Museum of Art. I'm the Associate Curator of Special Collections, Archives, and Research, which is kind of like the curator of stuff. And one of my jobs is to try to learn as much about our villa, the history of this property, the history of the family that built the property, and the people that lived here. Wade and Genevieve Phillips were the couple that built Villa Philbrook. They had moved here from Iowa. Wade Phillips was one of the Phillips brothers. The brothers built Phillips 66, the petroleum company. Wade Phillips kind of worked with them occasionally, but he had his own oil company, Wade Phillips Oil Company. And over only a few years, about a decade, he built his company from an investment of about $25,000 to, in 1925, he sold his company for $25 million. So he had an exponential growth in their assets. When they sold the company, they made a decision. They were trying to decide what to do, Wade and Genevieve Phillips and their children, Helen, Jane, and Elliot. And they had this property. This property was the allotment of the Creek woman, Lena Jefferson. She had passed away and deeded her property to her sons. Her sons then sold it to different interests, and there were several different owners until in 1921 when Wade and Genevieve Phillips assembled the land back together and had this property really as a farm. And so they decided, let's build our own house. Let's move out to the country, because this was the country. So let's move out to the country and build our dream house. So they loved the fact that there was a creek. They loved the fact that the property sloped. Genevieve apparently was very instrumental in figuring out where to put the house so that it had the best view. They had traveled to Europe and loved Italy. They loved the architecture of Italy, and so they brought a little piece of Italy back to Tulsa. The Phillips family lived here starting in 1927. They had 2 children, but within about 8 years or so, Helen Jane, their daughter, had eloped, and so she was married, and Elliot had gone away to school. So it was just Mr. and Mrs. Phillips who lived here, Wade and Genevieve. The people that worked with them worked for them in the home, a caretaker family that lived on another house on the property, and they decided really to downsize. Instead of selling the house to another family, they decided that they would rather give it away. At the same time, there was a group of people in town that were kind of chomping at the bit, really ready for there to be a museum. If Tulsa was going to be any kind of a vibrant city, there needed to be a museum in town. There wasn't a museum. There was a library and music, symphony, that kind of thing, but there wasn't a museum. So this group of people were working really hard, fundraising, bringing together a collection, but they were in essentially an office building downtown. And so Wade and Genevieve Phillips said, listen, we don't necessarily have artwork, but we have a place. We have a house. And it could be a museum. It's big enough. And there's this property. It could be a park. And so they had a vision And they wrote a letter in 1938 to the people of Tulsa saying, if these groups of people agree, if other people think this is a good idea, then we'll give our home away to be a museum, to be Tulsa's first museum. And so they wrote the letter in 38. It took about 9 to 10 months to architecturally change the building so it could be a place for people, not for a family, for the public, not just for a family, to move rooms around, to make a front, more of a front entrance, that kind of thing. And so in 1939, we opened to the public for the first time. There's so many wonderful secrets that you kind of discover as you work here, as you talk to our incredibly knowledgeable staff, our historians, and our docents. I'm not sure if it's a secret, but one thing that a lot of people want to know is that in a room on the south end of the property, on the south end of the villa, is a light-up dance floor. So this was originally the sunroom. It was a really casual space for the Phillips family, and now it has paintings from the Italian Renaissance. But it has this glass block floor, and the colors change. It has 4 different colors that light up. But one of the things that's almost magical about that space is that the reflected light from above, from the gallery, comes down, and even though that box, around the box, is really dark, when you walk into that open box, you get the light that's filtering through from the galleries, and it's this really lovely, magical space. And so our engineers, when a light is out, they have to shimmy under, turn around. You have to be pretty agile to change the light bulbs under the dance floor. I grew up in Tulsa, and we would, ride our little bikes, and we would visit. And at that point, the gardens were open, so you wouldn't have to go through the villa, so you could explore the gardens. We have artwork on the grounds now, so we have to close it off. So I imagined living here all the time. I imagined swimming. This pool behind us was a swimming pool, so I imagined swimming in the swimming pool. I made up stories about climbing the trees and having pets, and so absolutely. What do I love about Tulsa? I love the people of Tulsa. I love that whomever you meet, whomever you talk to, there's a story. There's a different story, there's a different experience, and that we can learn from each other. I love that people have moved here. I love that people have lived here for their whole lives or generations, and that they can help give us a little bit of context. And there are people like me that grew up here, moved away, and came back. So I really love the people of Tulsa.
My favorite thing about Tulsa, it's hard to say because I'm all things Tulsa. I think the people, we have so many amazing people that do so much for their fellow citizens. We have so many philanthropists that donate their hard-earned money and time to help other people in need. Of course, I'd love to collect a lot of old things about Tulsa and Oklahoma, but I'm really grateful and proud of our musical heritage, all the way from Bob Wills from Kane's Ballroom to what Leon Russell did in 1972. He was the #1 touring artist in America, and he came back to his hometown in 1972 and invested a lot of time, money, and resources. We've had over the years many comebacks or renaissance, and I think we're in the middle of that right now. But really, Tulsa wouldn't be where it is without the generosity and the loyalty of people that live here and have built this city.
What is your favorite home in Tulsa? Do you enjoy any public spaces that used to be private residence? Let us know in the comment section down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. I've been Devin, you've been amazing, and we'll see you very soon.